Vila knew she was going to die. She could feel it in every part of her body. The cold had already taken her legs. She could not feel them anymore. The blood from her side had stopped flowing, but that was not a good sign. It meant her body had nothing left to give. The gray dust of the moon stretched in every direction. There was nothing here. No trees, no water, no life. Just rocks and silence and the distant stars that watched her without care. Her clan had left her here. They had not even looked back. She remembered the mission. It was supposed to be simple. Go to the human outpost, take what they needed, leave before anyone noticed. But the humans had been ready. They had weapons and alarms and soldiers who moved faster than her people expected. Vila had been shot trying to cover the escape. The plasma bolt had torn through her side like fire. She had fallen, and her clan leader had looked at her with cold eyes. "She is finished," he had said. "We cannot carry the dead." She was not dead, not yet, but that did not matter to them. They had loaded their stolen goods onto the ship. They had closed the doors. They had flown away into the dark sky, leaving her bleeding on the ground of this empty moon. That was hours ago, maybe longer. Vila had lost track of time. She lay on her back now, staring up at the stars. Her people, though, believed that the dead returned to the stars. They became light. They became eternal. It was supposed to be beautiful. But Vila did not feel beautiful. She felt cold and alone and afraid. Her breathing was shallow. Each breath hurt. The wound in her side burned even though the rest of her body was numb. She could taste blood in her mouth. This is how it ends, she thought. Not in battle, not with honor, just alone on a rock that nobody cares about. She thought about her mother. Her mother had died when Vila was young, killed in a raid that went wrong. Her father had told her to be strong. He had told her that did not cry, did not show weakness. Vila had spent her whole life being strong. She had trained harder than anyone. She had fought in 12 missions. She had never failed. Until now. A tear rolled down the side of her face. It froze almost instantly in the cold air. She did not bother to wipe it away. There was no one here to see her weakness. The stars above her began to blur. Her vision was fading. This was the end. Vila closed her eyes. She did not pray. They did not believe in gods. They believed in strength and survival and the cold logic of the universe. The strong lived. The weak died. That was the only truth. She was weak now, so she would die. She waited for the darkness to take her. She waited for the cold to finish its work. She waited for her heart to stop beating. But instead of silence, she heard something. It was a sound she did not recognize at first, a low hum growing louder, then footsteps, heavy footsteps crunching against the gray dust. She tried to open her eyes, but they were too heavy. She tried to move, but her body refused to obey. All she could do was lie there and listen. The footsteps stopped very close to her. Then she felt something impossible, warmth. Someone was touching her. Gentle hands were lifting her from the frozen ground. She could feel arms wrapping around her, holding her against something soft and warm. A voice spoke. The words were strange in a language she did not understand, but the tone was soft, worried, kind. With the last of her strength, Vila forced her eyes open. She saw a face looking down at her. It was a human face. A male with dark hair and dark eyes and skin that was pale from living in space. He was young, maybe 25 cycles by her counting. He was holding her like she was something precious, like she mattered. Vila tried to speak, but only a weak sound came from her throat. The human looked down at her and said something else in his strange language. His voice was gentle. He was trying to comfort her. Why, she thought, why would a human help me? We just attacked his people. We are enemies. But the human did not look at her like an enemy. He looked at her like she was a wounded creature that needed help. Nothing more, nothing less. He started walking, carrying her in his arms. Vila could feel his heartbeat against her side. It was strong and steady, alive. She should fight, she should resist. That was what a warrior would do. But she had no strength left, and some small part of her, the part that was tired of being strong, did not want to fight anymore. The human carried her toward a small ship that sat nearby. It was old and worn, covered in patches and repairs. Not a military ship, a salvage ship. He was alone. A salvager. He had come to pick through the wreckage of the battle to find things he could sell, and instead he had found her. He carried her up the ramp and into the ship. The air inside was warm, so warm that it hurt her frozen skin, but it was a good pain. It meant she was still alive. The human laid her down on a small bed. He disappeared for a moment and came back with supplies, medical supplies. He looked at her wound and made a sound of concern. Then he started to work. His hands were not trained like a medic's hands. He was clumsy. He had to read the instructions on the medical kit, but he was careful, so careful. He cleaned her wound and sealed it with medical gel. He wrapped bandages around her middle. Vila watched him through half-closed eyes. She did not understand. This made no sense. Humans were supposed to be weak and foolish and easy to defeat. Her people had always told her this. Humans were prey, not predators. They were soft creatures who had only survived because they bred quickly and spread across the galaxy like insects. But this human had found a wounded enemy soldier, an enemy who had just tried to kill his people, and instead of leaving her to die, instead of finishing her off, he was saving her life. Why? The human finished his work. He pulled a blanket over her body. It was thick and warm and smelled like him. He sat down on a chair next to the bed and looked at her with worried eyes. He said something in his language. She did not understand the words, but she understood the meaning. "You are safe now. I will not hurt you." Vila's eyes grew heavy again, but this time it was not death pulling her down. It was sleep, real sleep, the kind that healed. The last thing she saw before darkness took her was the human's face. He was still watching her, still worried, still kind. She had closed her eyes to perish, but she had opened them to see a human holding her. And somehow, against all logic, that human had decided she was worth saving. Vila woke to the sound of something cooking. For a long moment she did not move. She kept her eyes closed and listened. There was a soft sizzling sound, the smell of food, the hum of a ship's engine running in the background. She was warm. That was the first thing she noticed. Warmth surrounded her like a blanket, like safety. Then she remembered. Her eyes snapped open. She tried to sit up, but pain shot through her side and forced her back down. She gasped and pressed her hand against the bandages wrapped around her middle. Hey, Uzi." The voice came from nearby. She turned her head and saw him, the human. He was standing at a small cooking area holding a pan. He put the pan down quickly and hurried over to her. He knelt beside the bed and held up his hands, palms open. The gesture was universal. I mean no harm. Vila stared at him. In the light of the ship she could see him more clearly now. He was young, as she had guessed. His dark hair was messy, and there were dark circles under his eyes like he had not slept. His clothes were worn and patched in many places. He spoke again in his language. The words meant nothing to her, but his voice was calm and gentle. She opened her mouth and spoke in her own language. "Who are you? Why did you save me?" He tilted his head, clearly not understanding. Then he smiled a little and pointed to himself. He said slowly, "Do." A name. He was telling her his name. She hesitated, then pointed to herself. "Vila." His smile grew wider. "Vila," he repeated. He nodded, pleased with himself for this small communication. Then he stood up and went back to his cooking. A minute later he returned with a small bowl. It was some kind of soup. He held it out to her. Vila looked at the bowl with suspicion. It could be poisoned. It could be drugged. Her training told her to refuse, never accept food from an enemy. But her stomach growled loudly, and the smell of the soup made her mouth water. She had not eaten in so long. Seemed to understand her hesitation. He took a spoon, scooped up some soup, and ate it himself. Then he held out the bowl again as if to say, "See, it is safe." Vila took the bowl. Her hands were shaking, but she managed to bring the spoon to her mouth. The soup was simple, some kind of grain and vegetables, not much flavor, but it was warm and it filled her empty stomach, and in that moment it was the best thing she had ever tasted. She ate slowly, watching him. He had gone back to the cooking area and was cleaning up. He moved around the small ship with easy familiarity. This was his home, she realized. This tiny salvage ship was where he lived. The ship was small, very small. There was the bed she lay on, the cooking area, a pilot seat at the front, and storage areas filled with junk and parts. There was barely room for one person, let alone two. When she finished the soup, took the bowl and smiled at her. Then he pointed at her bandages and made a gesture that she understood as, "Let me check." She tensed but did not stop him. He carefully lifted the edge of the bandage and looked at her wound. He made a satisfied sound and nodded. Then he applied more of the medical gel and replaced the bandage with a fresh one. His hands were gentle, so gentle. Vila did not understand this creature. They had fought humans for 3 generations. They had raided human ships, attacked human colonies, taken human supplies. The humans had fought back, but they had always seemed weak, disorganized, emotional. Her people called humans the soft ones. They bled easily, they cried easily, they gave up easily. That was what she had been taught. But this human did not seem weak to her. He had found an enemy soldier dying on a frozen moon, and he had not hesitated. He had not called for military backup. He had not left her to die. He had carried her into his home and given her his bed and his food and his only blanket. That was not weakness. That was something else, something she did not have a word for. Days passed. Vila could not walk at first. The wound in her side and the damage from the cold had left her body weak, so she lay in the bed and watched go about his life. He was a salvager, as she had guessed. He spent his days sorting through the junk he had collected, old ship parts, broken machines, scrap metal. He would repair what he could and organize the rest into bins for selling. He talked to her sometimes, even though she did not understand his words. He seemed to be the kind of person who did not like silence. He would tell her stories, she thought, or explain what he was working on. She would listen to the sound of his voice and try to pick up words. Slowly she started to learn. Simple words first. Food was, water was, yes was, no was. He would point at things and say the words, and she would repeat them. He was patient, so patient. When she made mistakes, he never laughed at her. He would just say the word again and smile. She learned his name meant something like path of virtue in his language. She found that funny, though she did not tell him. He had certainly lived up to the name. As her body healed, she started to move around the ship. It was hard at first. Her legs were still weak and her side hurt with every step, but she forced herself to walk, a little more each day. Worried about her, she could see it in his eyes every time she pushed herself too hard. He would shake his head and say words that probably meant something like, "You need to rest," but he never tried to stop her. He understood, she thought. He understood that she needed to be strong again. One night she woke to find him asleep in the pilot's chair. He had given her the only bed on the ship, which meant he had been sleeping in that chair every night. It could not be comfortable. His neck was bent at a strange angle, and he was shivering slightly from the cold. Vila lay in the warm bed and looked at him for a long time. He had given her everything, his bed, his food, his time, his medicine. He had nothing to gain from helping her. If anything, helping her was dangerous. If other humans found out he was sheltering her, he could be arrested, maybe killed. But he had helped her anyway. She got up slowly, careful not to wake him. She took the blanket from the bed and walked over to where he slept. Gently, she draped it over his shoulders. He stirred but did not wake. He pulled the blanket around himself and sighed. Vila went back to the bed and lay down. She was cold now without the blanket, but she did not care. For the first time in her life, she had done something kind for someone else without expecting anything in return. It felt strange. It felt good. She closed her eyes and slept, and for the first time since she had been left to die, she did not dream of darkness and cold. She dreamed of warmth and a gentle voice and hands that healed instead of hurt. She was still an enemy in a stranger's home. She was still weak and wounded and far from her people. But she was alive. And for the first time, she was starting to understand why. 2 weeks had passed since had found her on that frozen moon. Vila's wound had healed enough that she could move without pain. Her strength was returning slowly, and she could walk around the small ship without needing to rest. But she was still weak, still far from the warrior she had once been. She stood at the small window of the ship and looked out at the stars. They were docked at a trading station now, had gone out to sell some of his salvage and buy supplies. He had locked the door from the outside, not to keep her in, but to keep others out. "Stay hidden," he had said before leaving, or at least that was what she thought he said. Her understanding of his language was still limited. Dangerous, people see you bad. She understood. If anyone discovered on this station, there would be trouble. Her people were enemies of the humans. She would be arrested at best, killed at worst. So she waited in the dark ship and watched the stars and thought about everything that had happened. She still did not fully understand. Every day she watched him and tried to make sense of his actions. Every day she failed. He worked hard, harder than anyone she had ever known. He woke early and worked late, repairing broken machines and sorting through junk that most people would throw away. His hands were covered in small scars from years of this work. He had very little. His ship was old and falling apart. His clothes were worn thin. He ate simple food and slept in an uncomfortable chair so she could have the bed. But he never complained. He never seemed angry or bitter about his life. He just worked and smiled and talked to her in his gentle voice. And he shared everything with her. This was the part she could not understand. Among the resources were precious. You kept what you had. You did not share with strangers. You certainly did not share with enemies. But shared everything, his food, his medicine, his warmth. He gave without thinking, without calculating what he would get in return. It went against everything she had been taught. The door opened and stepped inside. He was carrying bags of supplies and his face was lit up with a smile. "Vila," he called out, "good news." She had learned enough of his language to understand simple sentences now. She turned from the window and looked at him. He set the bags down and pulled something out. It was a small device of some kind. He held it up proudly. "Translator," he said. "Old model but works. Now we talk better, okay?" A translator. Vila felt her heart beat faster. She would finally be able to understand him. She would finally be able to ask all the questions that had been burning inside her. Walked over and showed her how the device worked. It was simple. He spoke into it, and a moment later her language came out. She spoke into it and his language came out. He grinned at her. "Test it, say something." She took the device and spoke carefully. "Why did you save me?" The translator hummed, and then her words came out in his language. His smile faded a little. He looked at her with serious eyes. "Because you needed help," he said. The translator turned his words into her language. "That is all." "But I am your enemy," she said. "My people attack your people. We have been at war for generations. I could have killed your kind just days before you found me." He listened to the translation and nodded slowly. "Maybe, but when I found you, you were not a soldier. You were just a person who was dying, and I could not walk away from that." Vila stared at him. "Among my people, we would have left you. If you were an enemy dying on the ground, we would have stepped over you. We would have let you die. That is the way of things." Was quiet for a moment. Then he sat down on a storage crate and looked at her. "Humans were like that once," he said. "Long ago, before we went to the stars. We were divided into tribes and nations. We fought each other all the time. We let our enemies die. We were cruel." He paused, choosing his words carefully. But then something changed. We realized that we were all the same, all humans, all people, and if we kept being cruel to each other, we would destroy ourselves. So we learned to be different. We learned to help even when it was hard, even when it did not make sense. Vila shook her head. "That is weakness. If you help your enemies, they will take advantage of you. They will use your kindness against you." "Sometimes," agreed. "Sometimes people take advantage. Sometimes kindness is rewarded with pain, but that does not mean we should stop being kind." "Why not?" He smiled, a sad kind of smile. "Because if we stop being kind, we become the thing we hate. We become cruel. And what is the point of surviving if we lose who we are?" Vila did not know how to respond to that. It was such a strange way of thinking, so different from everything she had learned. Among the strength was everything. You were strong or you were nothing. Kindness was weakness. Mercy was foolishness. These were the lessons she had been taught since childhood. But here was this human, this soft creature who should have been weak, and he was the strongest person she had ever met. Not strong in body, strong in something else, something deeper. "I do not understand you," she said finally. He laughed. "I do not understand myself sometimes, but that is okay. We do not have to understand everything. We just have to try to be good." They talked for hours that night. The translator made it easy, and once the words started flowing, they did not stop. He told her about his life. He had grown up on a space station, the son of workers who repaired ships. His parents had died when he was young, killed in an accident. He had been alone ever since, making his living as a salvager. It was a hard life, lonely, dangerous, but he did not complain. He said he liked the freedom. He liked being able to fly wherever he wanted. She told him about her life too, about growing up as a warrior, about the training and the missions and the endless fighting, about her clan and how they had left her to die. When she told that part, his face grew dark with anger, not anger at her, anger at them. "They should not have done that," he said. "That was wrong." "It is the way," she said. "The weak are left behind." "Then the way is wrong." She should have been offended. He was insulting her entire culture, but instead she felt something loosen in her chest, like a knot she had not known was there. Maybe he was right. Maybe the way was wrong. Maybe she had spent her whole life believing in something that was broken. It was a terrifying thought. But for the first time, she let herself think it. The night grew late, yawned and stretched. He glanced at the pilot's chair where he usually slept. Vila made a decision. "The bed is big enough for two," she said. "You should not sleep in that chair anymore." He blinked at her, surprised. His face turned slightly red. "I do not mean anything by it," she added quickly. "I just mean that you are tired and the chair is bad for your body and you have done enough for me. Let me do this small thing in return." He hesitated, then nodded. "Okay, thank you." That night they slept on opposite sides of the small bed, a careful distance between them. But it was warm, and neither of them was alone. Vila stared at the ceiling in the darkness and thought about everything that had changed. She had come here as an enemy, a warrior, who believed in strength above all. But now she was starting to believe in something else. Something that felt a lot like hope. The attack came without warning. Vila was helping sort through salvage when the first blast hit the ship. The whole vessel shook, and she was thrown against the wall. Alarms started screaming. "What is happening?" she shouted over the noise. Was already running to the pilot's seat. His fingers flew across the controls as he pulled up the external view. 3 ships were approaching. They were small and fast, painted black with no markings. Pirates. Raiders, said. His voice was calm, but she could see the fear in his eyes. They must have seen me at the trading station. They think I have valuable cargo. Another blast rocked the ship. Sparks flew from a damaged panel. Can we run? Vila asked. They are faster, he shook his head. They will catch us. Then fight. Do you have weapons? He pointed to a small locker. One pistol, that is all. One pistol against 3 ships full of raiders. Those were not good odds. But Vila had been trained for situations like this. Her mind was already working, calculating, planning. How long until they dock with us? She asked. A few minutes. They are sending a warning now. They want us to surrender. She grabbed the pistol from the locker and checked it. It was a simple human weapon, not very powerful, but it would have to do. We are not surrendering, she said. When they come in, I will fight. You stay behind me. Stared at her. You are still injured. You cannot fight them alone. I am a warrior. I have fought worse. It was not entirely true. She was weak and her side still ached, and there would be many of them. But she would not let these raiders hurt. He had saved her life. She would protect his. The raider ships attached to their vessel with a loud clang. Vila positioned herself near the door, pistol ready. Her heart was pounding, but her hands were steady. This was what she had been trained for. The door was blasted open. The first raider came through and Vila shot him in the chest. He fell. The second raider appeared and she shot him too. The third one was smarter. He fired before entering and she had to dodge behind a crate. More raiders poured in. 5, 6, 7, too many. Vila fought with everything she had. She shot 2 more before the pistol ran out of ammunition. Then she grabbed a piece of metal and used it as a weapon, blocking attacks and striking back. But she was outnumbered. A blow caught her in the side, right where her old wound was. She cried out in pain and stumbled. A raider grabbed her arm and twisted it behind her back. Another one pointed a gun at her head. Stop fighting, the leader said. He was a large man with scars on his face. Or we kill you and take what we want anyway. Vila struggled, but it was no use. They had her. The leader looked around the small ship and laughed. This is what we risked our lives for. Junk. Worthless junk. He turned to, who was standing near the pilot's seat, had not moved during the fight. He had stayed where Vila told him to stay. What about credits? The leader demanded. You must have some credits saved somewhere. Shook his head. I have nothing. I am just a salvager. I barely make enough to eat. The leader walked over to him and grabbed him by the throat. Do not lie to me. Everyone has something hidden away. I am not lying, choked out. I have nothing. The leader snarled and threw against the wall, hit it hard and slid to the floor. Then the leader pulled out a knife. Maybe I should cut the truth out of you. Something inside Vila snapped. She did not think, she did not plan, she just moved. With a burst of strength she did not know she had, she broke free from the raider holding her. She grabbed his gun as he fell. She turned and shot the raider who had been pointing the gun at her head. She shot 2 more before they could react. Then she was out of ammunition again, but she did not stop. She threw herself at the leader, knocking him away from. The knife flew from his hand. They crashed to the floor, and Vila hit him again and again with her fists until he stopped moving. She stood up, breathing hard. Her side was screaming with pain. Blood was soaking through her bandages. The room was spinning. The remaining raiders looked at their fallen leader, then at her. There was fear in their eyes now. Leave, she said. Her voice was low and deadly. Leave now, or I will kill every last one of you. They ran. She heard their ships detach and fly away. Only then did she allow herself to collapse. Was beside her in an instant. He was crying. Tears were streaming down his face as he pressed his hands against her wound. No, 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 he kept saying. Stay with me, please stay with me. She looked up at him and smiled weakly. I am still here. He lifted her carefully and carried her to the bed, just like the first time, just like when he had found her dying on that frozen moon. His hands shook as he treated her wound. She watched him work and felt a strange peace. "Why did you do that?" he asked. His voice was trembling. "You could have died." "You saved me," she said. "I owed you a debt." "This is not about debt," he was almost shouting now. "This is about you almost dying for me. Why would you do that?" She reached up and touched his face. Her fingers left a smear of blood on his cheek. "Because you taught me something," she said. "You taught me that some things are worth protecting, that some people are worth protecting, even if it hurts, even if it is dangerous." He stared at her with wide eyes. "I closed my eyes to perish," she continued softly, "and I opened them to see a human holding me, a human who showed me what it means to be truly strong, not strong because you can fight, strong because you care, strong because you refuse to give up on others." A sob escaped from his throat. He pressed his forehead against hers. "Do not die," he whispered. "Please do not die." "I will not," she promised. "I have too much to live for now." She closed her eyes and let the darkness take her. But this time she was not afraid, because she knew that when she woke up, he would still be there, holding her, just like the first time. And that was enough. Vila opened her eyes to see sunlight. Real sunlight, not the cold glow of distant stars or the artificial light of a ship. Warm, golden sunlight streaming through a window. She blinked and tried to sit up. Her body ached, and her side was wrapped in fresh bandages, but she felt stronger than she had in a long time. She was in a room she did not recognize. It was small and simple, with white walls and a wooden floor. The bed she lay in was soft and comfortable. A gentle breeze came through the open window, carrying the smell of grass and trees. Where was she? The door opened and walked in. When he saw that she was awake, his face broke into a wide smile. "You are up," he said. "Finally, you slept for 3 days." 3 days, she looked around the room again. "Where are we?" "A planet, a colony world called. It is a human settlement, but they have agreed to let you stay, at least for now." She stared at him. "How? I am an enemy." He sat down on the edge of the bed. "I explained everything, how I found you, how you saved my life. The colony leader is a good person. She understands that you are not a threat." Vila did not know what to say. She had expected to be arrested or sent away or killed. She had not expected to wake up in a soft bed with sunlight on her face. "And you," she asked, "what will you do now?" Looked out the window. "I sold my ship. It was too damaged from the attack. The money will help us get started here." "Get started?" He turned back to her with a shy smile. "I am staying, if you want me to." Vila felt her heart skip. "You are giving up your life for me, your ship, your freedom." "That ship was falling apart anyway," he said, "and I was lonely out there, always flying from place to place, never belonging anywhere." He paused and looked into her eyes. "But with you, I do not feel lonely anymore." She reached out and took his hand. His fingers were warm and rough from years of work. She had seen those hands repair machines, cook food, and treat wounds. Now she held them gently in her own. "I do not deserve you," she said quietly. "I was trained to be a killer. I attacked innocent people. I did terrible things." "That was the old you," he said. "The person your clan made you into, but you are not that person anymore." "How can you be sure?" "Because that person would not have risked her life to save a human salvager," he smiled. "You have changed, Vila. I have seen it happen. Day by day, you have become someone new." She thought about his words. He was right. She had changed. The Vila who had been left to die on that frozen moon was not the same Vila who sat here now. That Vila had believed in strength above all else. This Vila believed in something different, something she was still learning to name. A month passed. Life on was strange for Vila. She had never lived on a planet before, never walked on grass or felt rain on her skin. Everything was new and sometimes overwhelming. But she was learning. Found work as a mechanic in the colony. His skills with machines were valuable, and people quickly grew to respect him. He came home every evening tired but happy, and he would tell her about his day while they ate dinner together. Vila spent her days learning about the colony and its people. At first, everyone was afraid of her. They had heard stories about the raids and the killing. They looked at her with suspicious eyes and kept their distance. But slowly things changed. She helped a farmer repair his broken vehicle. She carried supplies for an elderly woman who could not manage them alone. She played with the children who were too young to know they should be afraid of her. The colony leader, a woman named Jinnah, visited her one afternoon. She was a small woman with gray hair and kind eyes. "You are not what I expected," Jinnah said. "When told me he was bringing I thought he was crazy. But watching you these past weeks, I see that you are just a person, like anyone else." Vila bowed her head. "I am trying to be better than what I was." "That is all any of us can do." Jinnah smiled and handed her something. It was a piece of paper with official markings on it. "This is for you, citizenship papers. You are now a legal resident of." Vila's hands trembled as she took the paper. "I do not understand. Why would you do this for me?" "Because vouched for you, and because everyone deserves a second chance." Jinnah patted her on the shoulder. "Welcome home, Vila." That night Vila showed the papers too. He read them and then pulled her into a tight hug. "I knew it," he said. "I knew they would see what I see." "What do you see?" she asked. He pulled back and looked at her face. "I see a warrior who learned that true strength is not about hurting others. I see someone who was taught to hate but learned to love. I see someone brave enough to change everything about herself." Vila felt tears forming in her eyes. She had not cried since the night she was abandoned on that moon, but now the tears came freely. "I was going to die," she whispered. "I closed my eyes and I was ready to die, and then you found me." "I found you," he agreed, "and I am so glad I did." She kissed him then. It was gentle and soft and full of all the things she could not say. Years passed. Vila and built a life together on. They married in a small ceremony with the colony as their witnesses. They built a house on the edge of town where they could watch the sunset every evening. Vila never forgot what she had been, but she learned to forgive herself for it. She told her story to anyone who would listen. She spoke about thee and their ways. She spoke about how wrong those ways were. She spoke about the human who had saved her life and shown her a different path. Sometimes others found their way to the colony, refugees who had been abandoned like her, soldiers who were tired of fighting. They came because they had heard stories about a woman who lived among humans. Vila welcomed them all. She helped them adjust to their new lives. She taught them what had taught her. That strength was not about power, it was about love. That kindness was not weakness, it was courage. That anyone could change, no matter how broken they seemed. One evening, many years later, Vila sat on her porch and watched the stars come out. Sat beside her, his hair now gray with age. They held hands like they always did. "Do you remember the day you found me?" she asked. "I remember every detail," he said. "You were so cold. I thought you were already dead until you opened your eyes." "I thought I was dreaming," she said. "I thought death had sent me a vision of hope before taking me away." He squeezed her hand, but it was real. "It was real," she agreed. "You were real and you changed everything." She looked up at the stars that had once seemed so cold and distant. Now they seemed warm, welcoming, like old friends watching over her. She had closed her eyes to perish, but she had opened them to see a human holding her. And that human had given her something she never thought she would have. A home, a purpose, a love that would last until the stars themselves faded away. And in the end, that was everything.